Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on exploring the fascinating world of near-death experiences, communication with spirit, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Magic is Real. I'm Shannon Torrance, and I really appreciate you all being here. Today, I have with me Mary Deioma. Mary is the author of a book called Loved, a Transcendent Journey. We often talk about near-death experiences on this channel, and today we're going to talk about something similar but a little bit different, which is out-of-body experiences, which I'm finding more and more is a thing, and that you don't have to die to have an out-of-body experience. And I've met several people who have. So Mary is here to talk about her I don't know, what do you call it, Mary? Out-of-body experience or
I call it a transcendent experience or an enlightenment experience because I have had a lot of out of body experiences. I usually align those with the getting out of your body from sleep. But my experience, I was fully awake and fully conscious.
yeah, we've talked a little bit on this show about shared death experiences, which is when somebody that you love and are very connected to and bonded with passes, and you actually have the opportunity to sort of spend some time with them on the other side, either as they're departing or a little bit after that. So, but then there's also people who have had just these transcendent experiences that we'll talk about. So, first of all, I just want to kind of get to know you. I know you're also a Reiki master. I'm a Reiki certified level 2. And so that's interesting to me. And I know that you also are a card reader and you read playing cards, which is a little bit different from tarot in that they're regular tarot, I mean, playing cards. Yeah.
It's basically the same thing. It just I got familiar with the numbers and the other. It all translates almost one for one to the tarot deck, but
Right.
it's the same. Just using the I feel like more like a gypsy than a
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's talk about your life. I want to know about Mary. Mary, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? And what was your awareness of spirituality as a young one?
good question. I grew up in Alliance, Ohio. It's a very small town
Hmm.
in Ohio, and I was raised Catholic. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, but the whole time I was in doubt of spirituality. Even though I had had a near death experience when I was 5, I was shut down, as they are sometimes, and I forgot about it. But I was always questioning, what about this? What about this? I was like up into the priest, quite, and they're like, don't bother me. But I I was the fifth of 8 children, so I had a lot of brothers and sisters, and it it was uh, I was always bullied when I was little. I didn't know why exactly, but people always thought I was weird, and so I had that challenge my whole life, and I had to figure out how to negotiate that that part of the story. Actually, I had some finally got a handle on it in high school on how to deal with the bullies, and it ended up being very spiritual the way it helped me. But I didn't put the pieces all together until I was in my 30s when my transcendent experience happened.
Right. Well, I just want to say that you're not alone. I also was a weird kid. I mean, I'm not saying you were, just saying that I was perceived as being weird. And that had a lot to do with my sensitivities, which is, I'm assuming, you as well. I tended to be, I was elective mute. I had a birthmark on my face that was very large. And so, of course, that was the first thing people noticed. And they're little kids. So they don't know better than to say, you're ugly or you have duty on your face. And so that made, and as a sensitive kid, I used to be very shy and withdrawn and didn't talk because I just wanted to shut everybody out. So they just wouldn't look at me at all. And I have a lot of memories of Montessori school, sitting all by myself and isolating myself and sitting in a corner and having a special teacher for me. So, and I know that really sticks with you. So I'm sorry that you went through that. Although, if you're anything like me, it sort of becomes a gift later on because it really bred a lot of empathy in me and a lot of ability to see why I went through those things as I got older and use it as an asset instead of
That's good that
something.
you got the awareness of what was good that came out of it. Actually, I was a stutterer until I was like 6 or something.
Yeah.
So
It,
before I, yeah, and then kids would make fun of me. And then I also, in addition to stuttering, I couldn't say R, my R's. So then they would, and my middle name is Barbara, so they would say Mabui Babwa.
oh, kids are so mean and they just don't know. They just don't know. They're figuring the world out, but I know it really sticks with you. And I know it can really affect your self esteem in the long run. But it also, I think, can be such a gift as you grow and realize that that's actually your empathy, that you can root for the underdog, that you really can care about other people having been through it. I feel like I'm glad I went through it personally. And let's talk about that 5-year-old experience, because I also, as I was listening to an interview with you, I suddenly had this feeling. You said something about, I know you'll have to tell me kind of what looking back your experience was. I'm assuming at age 5, you just didn't have any reference for what it was. So it was just part of what you experienced without questioning it. Is that correct?
Well, let me just tell you, because it's not in the book, so
Oh,
and not
please
too many
do.
people know this story. So
I'd
I'll
love
just
to hear it.
so when I was 5, I got one of those little plastic sliding boards for my birthday,
Like a
and
slip and slide, you mean?
no, it was just about 2 feet tall off the
Okay.
ground. It was plastic and had like 3 steps up,
Oh, a
and
slide.
yeah, like a
Yes.
sliding board. It was just like a little. Well, I don't know about that.
Mhm.
I was anyway. We're It was set up in our basement, which had a cement floor, and was standing on the top of the slide, and I fell backwards, and I hit my head on the cement, and it was I was unconscious, and it happened when we had a babysitter. There was So you have to remember there's 8 kids, this poor babysitter, and one of
Oh,
the
yeah.
kids is injured. And so I I come to when they're taking me in a car. I'm in the back seat of a car, and my babysitter is holding on to me, and my neighbor is driving. And then I'm out of it again, and I come to again. I'm in the hospital, and I'm face down on the bed because I had injured the back of my head. And then I become aware of seeing them, looking down and seeing the back of my head, seeing myself on the bed, and seeing the nurses and doctors around me. And the nurses are shaving the back of my head with a razor, like a one of those Bix or something.
Like a straight
And
razor, not a straight razor, but
yes,
yeah, like a plastic disposable razor.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I just was like, that's weird. I was like, I'm like, don't cut my hair. you know? I don't know. I was thinking about it really. I just observed it. And then after I got my stitches and I went back home, and I was telling my mom, and I told my mom that I saw them shaving my head. And she's like, well, that's not possible. So it didn't, she didn't know what to do with it. She didn't have any reference point of out of body experiences or anything. So she just said it's not possible and dismissed it. And so I didn't know where to go with it from there. So I just like, okay, but I remember it. And
Yeah.
then
When you're
she
5, you don't have any kind of reference for what that could have been, yeah?
and why would I know that they shaved the head around putting stitches in? I guess technically now I learn that they don't shave the area anymore. They just put the stitches in, but back then they shaved it. So how would I know as a 5-year-old that was a part of the procedure
Right.
anyway?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting, and I'm really glad you shared it because I think it actually kind of adds some extra credibility to what happened to you later. And I say that only because I think a lot of people are like, "What do you mean you just had this spontaneous out of body experience? Like, what is that about?" But I know, and I think you might as well, that I find having interviewed so many people that have had near death experiences, a lot of them had prior near death experiences in childhood that opened up that doorway or reopened, I want to say, that sort of reintroduced you to the quote unquote other side because so that was just a little bit of a window into, hey, there's something else over here. I feel like it's that crack that gets opened when you have a prior experience. And I'd love to hear what you say when, what you think about when it happened again. I just feel like you were just that much closer and more aware and more able to sort of get through that portal. Do you agree with that, or do you have another thought about that?
I think it absolutely has an influence on it, and the way I came to remember it was a great way to remember it because so I had shut it down and I was like probably I had that knowing of what happened. So when I went to church and religious school, and that's why I was like always questioning. I'm like, that's not right. I think you're wrong about that one
Yeah.
because I had a knowing. But anyway, it also probably made me more sensitive. It
Hmm.
helped me. I mean, like, there's the after effects of the near death experience, which, if you study near death experiences, you learn that that hypersensitivity and there's like a whole slew of symptoms that come with it. And so that probably was ingrained, part of my experience of being a child being so different was because of that also. But I had shut it down, so I didn't remember it. So I didn't know that it was a thing happening. Anyway, I had my enlightenment experience, and I'm going to the near death experience conferences and groups and sharing my experience. And I end up being a producer on a radio show, and then I'm looking for near death experiencers, and I'm talking to also my one of my good friends had been reading PMH Atwater's books about children, and so she told me that she thought I probably had had a near death experience when I was a child, and I'm like, nah, I don't remember anything. And then I was interviewing Barbara Bartolome from Santa Barbara. And I went and I spoke at Santa Barbara, and then she was on the radio show, or vice versa. Anyway, she had a late remembrance of her childhood near death experience because she was sitting and talking with PMH Atwater. So then I was talking with PMH Atwater, and I got her to be on our show. And anyway, and just the way that PMH knows everything about children, it reminds you of being a child, and she invests, she asks the questions that makes you remember. And it came back to me, and I was like, wow, that was cool that I had that. And then so I had gone and had my enlightenment experience not knowing that I had a near death experience, and wrote my book and did a whole bunch of interviews already, not knowing that I had my near death experience. I had an assumption that I just was able to do it 100% on my own without having uh, you know, an open door, like you said. And, but so I definitely did have an open door, and I can acknowledge that, that
Yeah,
it
and
helps you to keep going.
I think hearing your story, you talked at some point about how you remember what you thought was a dream, flying around your house, flying around, I don't know if it was just your house when you were little. And now you're like, I wonder if that was an out of body experience. And I actually have, I always say, oh, yeah, I used to dream. I remember my first flying dream. And I was flying around the living room table. And then as the years went on, I would fly through at the top of the chairs and then at the top of the stairs. And then as I got older, the flying began to be, oh, now I can fly, but I can't quite stay up. And now I can just soar as I got older and built up more confidence in myself. And it's interesting that this seems to be so universal. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and he had the same thing about flying. And I'm like, there must be something about remembering that when we're quote unquote dead, we can fly. Um, you know, in a different way. But I think there's some remembrance of being free enough that we can actually defy gravity, which I think is so interesting. And now I'm like, I wonder if my first thing was out of body. And now I'm starting to remember seeing invisible people that I thought, oh, maybe I was just hallucinating because I was sick or whatever. And I'm like, or was I? Because I remember being 5 and saying, yes, I was different because I was elective mute and I was in kindergarten at the time. And I remember every minute of it because it was sort of traumatic for me just being selective mute. And I remember like being in my room and dressing up in costumes. And I remember having the thought, something's different about me. I feel like I'm different. And I think that I'm an old soul and I am a medium now. And I understand now that I have the ability to communicate with spirit and to feel spirit. So enough about me, but I just wanted to relate because I think that so many of us have these memories and attribute them to because it's vague now. Like it's a dream, or maybe it was just some like mixed up memory, or maybe I'm remembering it wrong. But maybe there's so much, maybe because we were just out of the other side, kids tend to remember that and we don't even
I love
realize.
I love the power in your story that as a selective mute, and now you're the voice.
Yes.
You
Yep.
found your voice. Wow.
I say I'm writing a book about it. I am in my mind writing a book about it. I'm talking to Trisha Barker because she's a beautiful writer. And if any of you know Trisha, her book, Angels in the OR is one of the most amazing near-death experience books. So well written. And she's, offered to kind of help guide me a little bit in this. But yeah, there's a whole theme of losing my voice, finding my voice, losing it again, finding it again, having a spiritual awakening. So it's interesting, these themes, right? And so about you, tell me what happened. Tell us what happened on the day that you had this transcendent experience.
So, um, my catalyst, I will like skip the drama part and go right to the experience part this
Yeah.
time. My catalyst was emotional. I was really upset. And so I was like, okay, feel your feelings. And my feelings were like intensely heartbroken. And really, I just opened up. I found a way. I was driving my car, but having a conversation with God in the car, and I was able to just really open up my heart. And as I opened up my heart, I had this immense oneness experience. Like in the physical, there was a beam of white that came down through the car and touched me on my shoulder and like blasted me with all of this love. And every cell woke up and became conscious. And I had this like oneness with everything, the universe, and it went beyond the universe into the void. And it was like everything there is. So I'm like fully blasting with love, just like so intense. And then I came back to a normal state of consciousness, and I I had I I saw the next to the freeway there was this Barnes and Noble sign that was illuminated with gold, so I knew that was like another like very physical. I can see it with my physical eyes, tangibleness to the experience. Like it physically, tangibly touched me, and I physically saw this light. And so I went to the bookstore, and what I got, I didn't get the book, but I I saw the book that I was supposed to get, and I didn't get it, and then that book stayed in my mind's eye until I went back and I got the book, which was about math. But it was a mathematical expression that described the expansive consciousness in math. And anyway, but the point was, it was a validation within the experience itself to have that book that validates the experience. So it was like validating itself.
Yeah,
And
I understand what you mean. And I just want to interject. I interviewed Peter Anthony, and he's a numerologist, but also helps solve crimes and things using his knowledge of numerology that he gleaned when he had a near death experience. All these, and it's so funny because math was always my worst subject. And I would be a straight A student and then get an F in math. And I just remember throwing the book across the room and being like, I hate this. I hate this. And it come to find out it's all math and numbers. So I just think it's really interesting that math is actually a spiritual kind of thing and has to do with the order of the universe. And don't ask me to try to figure it out or read a book on it because I won't understand it. But I think it's fascinating. And I
it
know.
was a miracle that I understood the math.
And how did you know? I know you said you were sort of guided to that book. Were you in what is that? What I understood you say to say that you because of this the Barnes and Noble sign and you went to that store and what was it that drew you to that
the cover of
particular?
the book, the cover of the book, it was basically a face. Uh, um, and but when I left the bookstore, that of all the books that had seen while I was there, that one kept flashing in my mind's eye.
Right. Okay.
That's how I
Yeah.
knew that was the one. But when I was in the bookstore, I was disconnected, and I didn't know which book to get. So it's like too many
Yeah.
books in here. It's very confusing.
And
But
we'll talk a little bit too about I know that just when you were having this emotional crisis and you were really hurt, I believe you said something. Did you say it out loud or just in your head? What were you thinking when this happened?
oh, as I went into it, okay.
Yes.
So I had the questions that I asked myself and answered.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that actually did really make a difference. That I had that. I realized later now in um learning more about spirituality that that process of asking yourself questions and waiting for those answers to come with from inside, that process
Yeah.
is very powerful. And so I use that in helping people. So my question, as I was in this pain that was like beyond crying pain. And so I was like, I have to stop this. I have to get out of this pain immediately. Somehow do I move past this pain? So I asked myself, what would Mother Teresa do in this situation? And the answer that popped into my head was Mother Teresa would love anyway. So then I asked, can I love anyway? Well, what happened was my fiance had married somebody else. So I was kind of feeling betrayal and
Yeah, kind
really
of.
deeply hurt.
Yeah, it's pretty painful.
Yeah, I can laugh about it now, but it was
Yeah.
definitely not funny then, but
No.
it was intense.
Yeah.
So that was a hard thing to ask of myself. And I was surprised that when I did, the answer was yeah. And because I was awakened to a new perspective in that moment. I was somehow able to see it from his perspective. And because I knew him and I knew how he was raised in a different culture and with different priorities. And this was something that had come up before in our relationship is like, first, he owed his life and his decisions and everything, he owed first God, then his family, and then himself. So it's not that priority in American culture. It's first your individual and you're celebrated and your uniqueness is celebrated, and then something else, whether God or family, but definitely we are taught to be individual and to trust our own feelings and to to have a right to our own feelings. And so he wasn't raised with that at all. So when I could see that he had bent under the pressure of his family, I understood it. So I didn't take it personally because I knew that it wasn't meant personally. And then so I was feeling that love, but still the pain was like really
Right.
excruciating. So I asked, what would Jesus do? And Jesus would forgive. What does that actually mean? But that's part of like understanding where he's coming from. And so that in understanding it, I could forgive it. And then I asked, what would Muhammad do? And because I had learned about Muhammad from him, Muhammad's thing is to submit. And that's when I really felt like, okay, I did all my homework. I felt like I was having this conversation with God. I was co- connecting. I felt like I was in the relationship. I felt like I felt like there was no reason I did anything wrong for this to happen to me. So I like, all right, well, I did my work with, good intentions and it didn't work out. So, you can just take this from me because I felt like, it's yours to, I don't know, I just gave it away
Yeah.
and it worked.
And at that point was then you felt that sort of, or felt or perceived that beam of light. And then what else did you experience?
So, in the as the beam came down, my perception of the experience split, and I saw it from the passenger seat perspective. I saw it from the back seat. The consciousness of the passenger seat self was like a computer, like taking all in the data of everything. I saw like with hyper clarity what the beam was like looking like and where it was in space, and it had a diffused aspect to it. I had been taking photography classes, so I was seeing the color of things, and so it was pure white. And, but later, because I had already mentioned the Barnes and Noble light was actually a golden light, and then in the midst of the experience, I looked down at my hands, and they were bluish white light shining from inside my hands, and like all my cells were uh, like illuminated in a very physical way. And I just felt all this love in my body. I felt all of this love in every single cell. I felt love. The self behind in the back seat felt love. And then my self, or my perspective, shifted into the beam, and I became the beam, but the beam itself was the divine love. So I became this love, and I went up the beam, and the beam went to the height about where small aircraft are. So um it wasn't space. Even though I went up the beam and then I looked down, I could see the earth. I could see the curvature of the earth. and I could see in the distance the atmosphere blue line of the earth, but I was in it, but not past it. That was just a detail.
Yeah. And did you
And
receive, I was going to ask you, did you sort of receive what some people describe as a download with the, because I
I
know that,
did.
because I want to, well, because I know we'll talk about what prompted you to write the book, or I know you tell a lot of the secrets. So we'll leave that for people to read your book. But I assume that's where a lot of that knowledge came from that you share in your book.
Actually, I haven't unpacked the download yet. I think
Yeah.
I felt like it went right into this right here in the back of my head. I
Hmm.
just don't know why. It's a weird detail that I don't know why it just went right there.
I
But
get it. I get it.
yeah, it was like, no, this is for later. I think
Okay.
I'm not even gonna be able to tap into that download yet until maybe I'm like another 10, 15 years from now. It feels
Yeah.
like I'm still learning from my own experience. So I had the experience, but then I have to learn from my own experience. And it's a process.
Yeah. When you talk about the download sort of coming into the back of of your head, gave this reading last night, and it was actually one of the most powerful readings I've ever given. Where normally when I do mediumship readings, because I'm new to it, so it's not a lifelong. It's been 2 years, and I'd had a couple of weeks of like, I don't know, just feeling like my readings weren't that great. So I prayed, and I was like, please, like, show me that I can do this, and that this is really my path. And then I'd taken a Reiki class on Sunday, not just a refresher. And then yesterday, usually I do a meditation first, just before I just and start asking spirit to come in. And then I start to feel some energy. But this was, I started setting up my little space, and all of a sudden, bam, spirit rolled in, and I felt this static electricity all over my body. And when I was reading this woman, and it was just like information was coming, and I don't even know how I was getting it. It just felt like quiet little thoughts coming by, like the things that were right. I just heard these, I kept hearing words. Usually I'm more visual, but it was almost like they were talking to me in words this time. And it was the closest I've come to, oh my gosh, they're actually just talking to me. They're kind of bypassing my other senses and just going, whispering things to me. Like, I heard him say, like, pennies, Everglades. And she's like, yes, we both had coin collections and we had a cabin in the Everglades. And I was just like, I'm hearing words. But I was saying, I know it's them. I'm like, for some reason, I'm just like, it's coming in right here. I said, and for those who are listening, I'm pointing to the bridge of my nose. I said, when I get the information, it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It comes in right in front of my eyes, but it's sort of like a little bit back. You can almost feel the physical location of where the information in your face and your head is coming from. And it's just so weird. But so I know exactly what you mean when you're like, it's comes here in the back of my head. And I don't know why that is, or why I get tingles down my leg sometimes instead of some other place in my body. That seems to be where they tend to gravitate, is my right leg.
Yeah, and I get my left leg.
Do you? Do you have any insight into what that's about?
It's random thought, but my random thought was, in a past life, I feel like I lost that leg. So that's the I don't know, it's closer to the veil. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I know. It's just, I know maybe I should just ask them and maybe they'll reveal it to me one day. It's always on my right side. And I went to a neurologist the other day for my migraines, and I said, I'm just checking. I said, I have a lot of electricity in my scalp all the time. And I said, while we're checking for migraines, should I ask about MS? He goes, no, that wouldn't happen if you had MS. I said, all right, I'm just telling you. I said, I know you're a doctor, but I've just recently opened up had a spiritual awakening, and I've now started to communicate with spirit. I said, I know you may not believe this, but I just wanted to make sure from a doctor's perspective, this isn't some kind of a warning sign that I have something else. He's like, nope, your reflexes are so on point. And I said, well, it only started happening when I started to do mediumship. So I just wanted to check with you rule that out. But it's this constant like neurological feeling of just prickles and tingles and tapping on the shoulder. And it's just really fascinating. So yeah, now what I also find so interesting, and I know people will ask, you're not the only person I know who's had this happen to them while they were driving. I think part of us, our brain kind of goes into a different state because we're focusing on the road. And how does our body continue to drive while our soul is having this out of body experience, if you will?
Well, I have had that experience where you are driving and you're on automatic and you um, end up home and you don't know how you got
Yeah.
there. But this was different. I was fully aware of being okay in my body. Like I was not spaced out. I was in the moment. Actually, I was feel like I was more in the moment than ever have been before or since because I was I don't know, I was just in the moment
You were in
of
grief
driving.
too. Yeah.
It was 4:20 in the afternoon and the sun was over here, the beam of light came from over here, and like it was a blue clear sky. There was not a cloud in the sky. I just remember how like crisp the day was, even though I was really in turmoil. I'm like, how ironic that it's a beautiful day on the day that it's the worst day of my life. and anyway, so I just and I don't think my body's consciousness was impaired in any way, or other than I the level of pain that I felt in my heart. I did have the fleeting thought, maybe I should pull over.
Yeah.
But I'm like, nah, I'm almost home. I'll just keep
Just keep
going.
driving. Got beams of light shooting through me. I could see my own aura, but it's cool. I'll be fine. Let's
Yeah,
keep
that
an
was
eye on the
like
road.
half a second before the light. But yeah,
Yeah.
then I had the thought, oh, I should pull over. No. Okay. But yeah, it was, I love to hear other people's stories where they're fully conscious. I have heard of other people in groups
Mhm.
because going to the IANS groups in Los Angeles and Orange County and San Bernardino and San Diego, Santa Barbara. Those are the ones that I mostly went to. I did come to the one here in Ohio once, but there are all kinds of stories that people have that are they put them in the category of spiritually transformative experiences and call them STEs. And but I'm just gonna let that go.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, they are fantastic because it's so validating when I hear somebody else who had a conscious expansion or like this is experience enlightenment. And I didn't know it until I started sharing that so many more people have them. And one guy told me that in philosophy they're called noetic experiences, and they have apparently there's some catalog of them somewhere and I haven't found it yet, but that often people see a light or a beam or something similar. And I'm like, that's so cool. I love
Yeah.
validation.
Yeah. That's crazy because it must feel so. How do you, after this happened to you, and you can go on too and tell us a little bit more about what that experience showed you and revealed to you at that time. But I also am curious to know that when you got home, was it business as usual or were you like, wait, what just happened?
Well, in the moment for like I went through like as I came back into my body, like it in the all my pieces came back in the car still. Before I even saw the Barnes and Noble, I was just first I was this the very first thing that I thought was cool. That was so cool.
Yeah.
Then I
Yeah.
was like, that just happened. And then I was like, okay, I, I, what? And I really was like, now, what do I do? But then I saw the Barnes and Noble. I'm like, okay, now go to the Barnes and Noble.
Yeah. You just have an out of body experience and then just go book shopping. Just a normal day.
Yeah, so after when I got home, I I don't know, I think I was probably just blissed out, and, it was still like, the heartbreak that I had from the being betrayed was completely gone like it never happened, and I was, like,
Wow.
grappling with the shift from, uh, is there even really a God to absolutely there is a God.
Mhm.
Not just a God, but your God, sort of like I was like very confused. But that I was really distracted by the flashing of the book also. That whole
Right.
night, that book continued to flash in my mind's eye. So it distracted me from my own inner dialogue.
Right.
And so I went back and I read the book. The book was The Mystery of the Aleph, and it's a biography of the guy who came up with set theory. And anyway, it's math.
Okay. It's math. Right. So now after this experience, did you notice anything shifting in your awareness? Did you notice any kind of precognitive or um, just a heightened intuition? And even did you, throughout your life after your, even after your near death experience when you were 5, did you notice any kind of abilities such as mediumship or psychic awareness or something of that nature?
Well, um, the becoming aware of my extra abilities uh, has been gradual and continual.
Yeah.
And yes, I have some very, very special extra abilities, some of which did develop in childhood, which I had probably just denied them
Yeah.
their thing. Um, bef- but I did develop psychic abilities, and I learned how to, as I learned how to do card reading, and I went to the Learning Light and I took classes in spiritual development and the Reiki and opening the chakras and learning all about that um, Eastern technology. I became more, I did take mediumship class. I continued to have dreams where spirits would come and visit me in my dreams, and I would get like their whole drama of their story.
Yeah.
um, in like the regular day to day, I went through phases of psychoanalysis, of self analysis. At first, because I was not aware of anyone's recent experience in any similar way, I went through a Jesus complex. I don't know if you felt like that. Like, oh, God talked to me and showed up for me, and I must be special.
Right.
So I took on I felt like I had a responsibility, and that was too overwhelming for me. Like, oh my goodness, I have to be Jesus, and like, I don't know how to do that.
Right. Which is
But
a fallacy. You don't. You're because we're already beings of light and we all
but
come
I
from that
learned that
same
that's
source.
not abnormal to go through as
Yeah.
and you can see it happening in others too as they process the
Yeah.
experience. Also because it's about ignorance, because you don't know that it's so common. So you
Yeah.
think that you're like literally the only person on earth that can do this or that has had this experience, like without almost dying. I mean, because
Yeah.
I was aware of all the near death experiences. And anyway, so after I got over that ego, I I really was blissed out for a very long time. I can't even say it was like I lost any desire to for anything. Like I was fulfilled. I didn't need anything. I didn't need to really go out and earn any money or talk to anybody, or I just felt completely okay for a very long time. And that made me, abnormal because like people don't get it.
Right.
Also, I forgave my ex instantly, and people didn't get that either. They're like, you should be mad. I'm like, but I'm not mad.
Oh, that's such a freedom and such a release because that anger and resentment really holds us back so much. And it's not that anyone else wouldn't feel hurt and devastated and in grief, and there'd be moments, but what a gift for you to be able to be released from that so quickly. And to be able
Yeah,
to see, I love that you talked about being able to see his side of it, being able to sort of go in and experience what his decision was and kind of see it from a bird's eye view and detach from it in a way that was like, this isn't personal. Not that that matters, it can still hurt, but I love that. And I relate so much because I feel like having had a spiritual awakening myself, I'm like that too now. I mean, I've suffered from severe anxiety my whole entire life. And that's part of why I was selective mute because I just couldn't handle all the I was overwhelmed and overloaded. So I just decided I'm shutting everything out and I'm just going to go within because I can't handle all the stimulus. And now I just feel like I don't worry about much because I'm like I just know that it's all part of the flow and I can separate from the 3D better. Even what's happening now, not to say I don't care. I mean, obviously I'm very sad and concerned and I feel the anger that everyone else does about what's happening.
but you can also see it from the bird's eye,
Yes.
and you see
Yeah.
the value of the journey for
Yes.
others, which they
Yeah.
can't see yet. And even yourself, even when I'm in the midst of it, and a part of myself is just like, yeah, the journey. I'm like, shut up. I'm dealing
Yeah.
with. I'm gonna go be sad for a second.
Yeah, and the thing is we should, because that's our humans. We should feel those things. That's normal. But on that note, I do want to talk a little bit about that because I know your book talks sort of about like what's going on out there. What is this all about? Why? When we talk about the journey, I think you and I are on the same page about what that means. But to somebody who doesn't hasn't been introduced to that concept, what exactly do you mean, and why do we have these journeys, and how do they serve us?
Every experience, every single experience, including the horrible ones, has value. This is what the main lesson I got from going to the heaven level 2, which is also known as hell. So I'm just going to talk about the lesson part because
Yeah.
that's really the good part, that you can take the transformation from, is each one of us has given ourselves challenges within this lifetime to experience. And not all of them are challenges, but experiences to experience. And sometimes the experience is to learn something, but sometimes the experience is to know something, to like to know it in the experience of it. And then having known it through your own physical self, you can help somebody else. Maybe that's the positive value from that negative experience. Or um maybe the experience gives you some empathy, like you were saying. You learn empathy. In my childhood trauma, one of the gets I got from it was I learned how to be very inventive and find solutions. And I would continue. I had a problem, and I worked through the problem, and I found very very clever solutions. And then I feel like I have that skill that I can take with me wherever I go. If there's I can be on the spot and work things out quickly, and technical or otherwise. And so you don't know necessarily what the value of the experience is going to be, but there is, knowing that there's value from it gives you the idea to look for the value. And then in looking for the value, you can get something that you can put on the asset side of that
Right.
equation of why did that happen. And then the more you put on the asset side, then the more profit you have from that
That's
experience.
that's wise. And what's your belief about, or your understanding about, why do we even bother coming down here? Why don't we just stay in this state of, why don't we just stay spirits and just hang out there and do all this stuff there? Why do we need to come into these human incarnations?
Well, I'm just going to borrow Bruce Lipton's, and that is for the chocolate.
Yeah, that's really funny. I, having just finished a cup of hot chocolate myself, I think that's great. But yeah, I mean, do you think that, do our souls choose who we become? Do we choose to be Mary or Shannon in this life? And why do we, even knowing, do we choose to be somebody who comes here and suffers in a war, or from the death of a child or something, unfathomable? People, I know people have a hard time understanding, why would I choose that? And I think the question is always like, well, I wouldn't choose that, me personally, the human. But why would my soul choose something like that for me?
Well, I would say that we choose we may not choose the specificness of that challenge, but we choose to have a challenge that will give us the positive things that we're looking for in the values, the valuableness of the experience. So it may not play out. And that's where free will does come into play. And it's a feedback loop between that divine oneself that we are and how things are playing out in our physical. And that's why we do have free will. And part of why we're here in the physical is to create. And when we are being in the moment and creating something, anything, whether it's the inflection of your voice in a talking, or if it is performing or drawing something or writing something or even just thinking something very vibrantly, even if it never gets out of your body.
Yeah.
If we are putting together something that's completely new and novel in the universe, then that adds to the information or the field of love and consciousness that is God. We are God being in the physical. In my book, I described it as being the uh, small intestine. The small intestine is what takes in the nutrients of what we eat. And I was thinking about that because I had celiac disease and I can't eat gluten. The whole
Yeah.
gluten-free thing, that's I deal with that. But anyway, so part of that is you're not getting enough nutrition. So that was just on my mind when I was writing. And but that part of your body takes in the nutrients. And so we are taking in the nutrients of physicalness for God.
Yeah. That's such a great analogy. That really makes a lot of sense. And what do you know about spirit guides and angels and
Yes,
their
we have
role in our lives?
absolutely, we have spirit guides, we have specialized guides, uh, and um there are angels, there are also demons, There are malevolent and benevolent beings of all different varieties. But even those all are God too. Everything is God. But we have in each individuation of God has the free will to experience itself as it chooses, and sometimes it goes malevolent.
Mhm.
And you can uh you can change your experience of malevolence by changing your own focus and vibration. And so the higher your vibration, the less experience of malevolence you have. So if you have, I anyway, I don't want to. I can go deep into that, but I'll just go more into the spirit guides part of it. I felt like in my journey up into my enlightenment experience, I felt like I had this specialized driving angel that would
Mhm.
put on the brake before I did, that I could feel the brake go, and it would keep me from getting into accidents. I feel like I have a specialized, like, I call it the guardian DJ that plays the right song at the right time.
Yeah,
And a specialized finding things, which is Saint Anthony. You know, Tony, Tony, look around, something's lost, it must be found.
that's right. I actually keep forgetting his name, and every time I lose something now, I used to just freak out, tear the house apart, scream, and now I just go, angels, spirit guides, I need your help here. I know you're going to help me find this, and I always do. If you just stay calm and trust, it's here. And even when it isn't, last weekend I had lost my credit cards, and I'm like,
Mm.
I know you're going to help me find it. I know it. And I went up to this Civil War museum where I have been visiting. There are spirits there, and I've been getting to know the people there and working with them. And I was going up there for a paranormal investigation they were doing, and they're like, "Did you have this is your credit card?" And it was like it was there out, and it was another town away. But I just knew, I was like, it's gonna pop up. It's gonna pop up, and it popped up right when I pulled into the driveway. And it's like it will just you just have to trust, and it's so much easier to trust. I love that Tony. What is it? Tony.
Tony, Tony, look around, something's lost and must be found. And then you pause, and then you look at the screen in your eye, in your mind's eye, and it pops up in there if you're a visual person. Or
Yes,
sometimes you'll hear the whisper, or sometimes it's just an
that's
idea that you
true.
get.
That's so true. Do you know anything about remote viewing? And on that note, which is a little bit different, but in a sense, it's when you can take your consciousness into another location and you can look around and you can scan the room. And I have done it myself, with much to my own shock. So I wanted to know if you've ever done that, and what do you know about that? And what do you know about our consciousness's ability to be in your body, but also be in another place?
Yeah, I actually took a course from, um, I think his name is Robert Monagle. Sorry, I butchered his name. I'm not sure.
I know
Anyway, he
that.
was
I'm
at the
not sure
Learning
either.
Light, and so he's like one of the main guys that did it at the, the Stanford
See,
Institute. But
right.
it's a technique to be psychic, and you can do it without using the exact technique. It really is about tuning in to someone else or someplace else with a strong intention,
Mhm.
and getting the information, and then being able to check to see if you got it right.
Yeah.
But you can't always check to see if you got it right. Sometimes you just have to have faith that you did. But in while you're learning, it helps to be able to check to see if you got it right.
I know. And that's something I was just saying, because the curator and the people who run this Civil War museum, it's a Civil War hospital where a lot of people unfortunately died horrific deaths, but also there were people that lived there. It used to be a happy place. It used to be a tavern. And I'm in Virginia now, moved from LA. And so it's this beautiful, it's weird. It's a beautiful place where some really horrific things happened, but also there were also some good people that were there too. So there's sort of a blend. But they had said, we wanted to know if you can come in and help us by just communicating with the spirits and helping tell the stories of the enslaved people that lived here because their stories got lost along the way. The only story you hear is how the white people treated them so well and taught them how to read in this particular location. And we want to tell their stories because they helped with the surgeries and they were the ones that really kind of ran the ship. So, but I said, well, I mean, I can try. And I know when I go in there, when I feel spirit, but without someone being able to validate what I'm getting, I have a harder time than if I'm giving a mediumship reading where I can say, okay, you've got someone named Louise and standing there. And yes, that's somebody, it's your mother-in-law. And and someone goes, yes, yes, yes. So you're on the right track. But it is interesting, I think, to try to remote view. And I use it in my mediumship as well. Sometimes when I've sort of feel like I'm losing the connection, I'll just say, hold on, I'm going to tap into your house. And I walk myself through their house. And surprisingly, I've been able to say, I've told this before, there's a Raggedy Ann doll sitting in there. Sure enough, there was a Raggedy Ann doll sitting on she didn't have kids. Why did I see that? I don't know. I told her how the bed was made. I told her where the things were laid out. I could tell her the layout of her house. And so I'll use it as a tool. I'll say, show me her spirit, take me on a tour of her house. And that also helps me sometimes say, okay, you've got a daughter. And I know because I see her room over there and I see trophies and I see that she's an athlete. And it's fascinating. And I know that the CIA has used this too, which is a whole other topic of interest
Yes,
as
yes,
well.
the CIA, and they had a definite program where they were spying on the everybody pretty much.
Yep.
And they still do. They still have it going on. They just don't tell you.
I was gonna say, not that they're very open about it, but but you can find out information about the studies they did at least, and I'm sure they use it a lot more than we even know, which is really interesting. And then also, I'm gonna ask you a question just for fun. What is the meaning of life?
Mm, that's a good one. The meaning of life is what you give it. You get to make it up as you go if you want. You get to make it up what your meaning is, what your purpose is. You have the um, everything available to you to come to that conclusion of what you're here for. And I do think, though, there is a base meaning in or the purpose, and that is just to experience. And by having that as our primary purpose, just to experience, we already succeeded.
I love that. That's really nice. And then also, will you tell us a little bit about what you have going on? I know that you do. Do you do readings? I know your card readings and that sort of thing, and Reiki. Are you doing that and offering that service on a regular basis? What's your main focus? I know you have your book. Are you writing? Do you have events coming up? Share with us whatever you'd like to.
Okay. I am writing a new book. It is called Heaven's Traveler. And I am actually taking a workshop with Hay House so that I
Awesome.
can do a better job than the last one. Not that there was anything wrong with the last one. I'm pretty proud of it. Um, and then I have a second book that I also wrote, which is an ebook. And I am developing a course to go along with it, which is called 7 Steps for Enlightenment. And I have, as a part of learning how to be a published author, which is a whole new learning curve, I am trying to develop a platform, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And I do have a Facebook page, which is left over from the radio show. So it's called near death experience radio archives. And I have um, my side hobby, which is heliophysics.
What's heliophysics?
It is the study of space weather and solar activity.
That's so fascinating.
I have a Facebook page with over 12,000 followers, which is not like a million, but it's not nothing.
No, that's a lot.
And I also see or like meaningful messages in the sun, in the NASA pictures that are like swirly, like dark and light of the surface of the sun. And I have uh I made a little video to kind of explain what it is. So I can do readings using the sun, or we a different thing where we actually ask for a message from the sun and wait 24 hours and then see what the message is. So the sun literally communicates a message specifically to a person.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. I've never heard of it before, but I love that. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Mary. I'm so happy to have had you today, to have met you. You're such a beautiful spirit, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of this community where I get to meet so many beautiful people. And I hope I'll see you at the IONS conference at some point. Planning to go this in September, if that's exactly when it is. And in the meantime, I just want to encourage everyone to check out her book. Again, it is Loved, A Transcendent Journey. And also, if you liked this content, like, subscribe, and share, and do all the things. And if you want to be a guest on the show, you can email me at magicisrealshannon@gmail.com. And thank you again, Mary, for being with us and sharing your beautiful light today.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for doing what you're doing. It's amazing. I love your show. I love your energy. And I wish you all the best in everything you do.
Likewise, Mary. Thank you. Sending a big hug like this.
You are loved.
You are loved.